we made it to Friday. Mr. H here with you, Planet Earth. How you guys doing today? It's Friday, you gotta be doing okay, right? You made it to the end, you knew you were gonna get there. No problem. If there were, you just smile, nod, pretend there were, right? Never, ever let them see you sweat. It's Friday, you made it to the top of the mountain, take a look around, and what do you see out in the distance? You see the ruins of several colonial empires. Today's lesson is colonial empires don't work out. Alrighty, here's Britain in 1923. The empire in which the sun never set. And yeah, they're right. Somewhere the sun is shining on the British Empire. 100 years later, only thing they have is that red dot there at the bottom of South America, the Falkland Islands. Yeah, so what happened? Well, the British Empire is unique in many ways. And one way it was unique is that it didn't collapse like from an invasion or hordes of barbarians swarming over the borders or anything, no uprisings or anything. No, they just sort of let it go. They got rid of it. They voluntarily dissolved it. And, well, it was kind of obvious why they had to. It's the same reason a lot of people stopped doing things. They run out of money. That's what happened to Great Britain. They ran out of money. In the First and Second World Wars, they were broke. It was over. Colonial empires are expensive. You gotta put administrators there, station soldiers, naval fleets all over the place. The British were notorious for doing stuff on the cheap. They didn't have a lot of soldiers like in Canada or Australia, but had to put some in Africa and India. At the end of the day, they just couldn't do it anymore. And the main reason was exhaustion from basically the Second World War, kind of what did the British Empire in. India was the main crown, the jewel of the British Empire. It's where they made their money. And that empire, that part of the empire was the most important. They needed that more than anything else. Some people say Suez Canal in Egypt over there. But still, India was the one that made everything go. India, they've been having some problems with. In the late 19th century, Indian nationalism was beginning to make an appearance because, they're clearly not British. And they see there's a difference. There's also, they sent soldiers to help the British fight in the First and Second World War, so that led to the expectation that they should get some kind of reward, autonomy, even independence, some people are talking about. Naturally, if you have to send soldiers to help out the British, it leads to that question, if the British Empire is so invincible, what do you need us for? They had a big revolt in 1857, the Sepoy Rebellion. The British put that down barely back then. If there were another revolt after the Second World War, no way Britain could hang on to it. It just was not going to happen. So the British take a look around in 1945, see the US and Soviet superpowers, and Britain is dropping to a distant third in this contest. They realize they can't hang on to the empire, so they do the next best thing. They're going to leave on good terms and keep the trade links available, right? Still make money off this thing, but you don't have to run the country anymore. In the end, it saves money. India, like we said, nationalism had been growing over there. The Indian National Congress had started in 1885. Later, Gandhi shows up. And India's independence movement was unique for several reasons, too. The main one being that it was nonviolent. Yeah, I mean, there are a couple times the British overreacted and gunned some people down there in 1919. The Salt March protest, 1930, could have been handled a little bit better. But for the most part, a peaceful, nonviolent revolution. India had its problems. You had Hindus and Muslims, and they bridged the gap with the Lucknow Pact, and Gandhi's strong enough personality to keep it, keep that divide from opening up again. And India will become an independent country. Did so peacefully, and it's a good model for the rest of the world. And of course, the rest of the world didn't follow that model. Here's what I'm talking about India's problem here. See, the green is where Islam is the main religion. The orange is Hinduism. And their peaceful revolution just sort of disintegrated after the British had left. I guess they didn't have an opponent to focus on, so they turned on each other. When India became independent, everybody, all the Muslims are running towards the green areas, the Hindus stay in the orange. And the Muslims are majorities in two separate parts of the country. You have West Pakistan and East Pakistan. 1971 it becomes Bangladesh, but that's a whole different story. So India, home of a peaceful revolution, ends up degenerating into a full-scale war between India and Pakistan, ironically with a lot of British officers fighting in the Pakistani and Indian army. Oh, what went wrong? What went wrong? You can see that's where he divided it. And not only did they divide the country, they're still not finished dividing it. See that pink thing up there, Kashmir? Yeah, they're still arguing about who owns that, and they've occasionally fought over it. 1948, 1965, 1971. 1974, India becomes a nuclear power. Pakistan gets a nuke in 1987. 1999, over the Kargil Glacier, a place you can't even live. They almost got into it. I remember thinking, I'm going to see a nuclear war, and it doesn't involve the United States and the Soviet Union. Didn't see that one coming. Fortunately, that did not happen. So, well, they became independent. Guess you got to start somewhere. Now, we talked about how Britain voluntarily got rid of their empire. France takes a different approach. They try to fight to hang on. And they were in no position to fight to hang on to their empire. Now, France, got most of West Africa. As you can see, their own Syria. There's Madagascar down bottom of Africa, that random square looking thing in the Pacific. That's Tahiti. They were making a lot of money off Africa and also Vietnam on the backside of Asia over there. See how far it is on the east, just underneath China? That is where they were making a lot of money. Tin and rubber, and also access to other trade routes. Got the big naval base there at Da Nang. They weren't going to let go of that, but it wasn't really up to them, because in 1939, when they went to war against Germany, they lost. In 1940, Germany's ally Japan gets to take over French Indochina. And in 1945, when the war was over, the French came back. They've got a bit of a problem. Vietnam wants to become an independent country. France isn't going to let them. And we've got an all-out war. Ho Chi Minh of Vietnam attempted to do it peacefully at first, even willing to keep the trade links in place in exchange for independence, so he wasn't happy about it. France wasn't going for it. That offer disintegrated in a hail of 16-inch battleship shells smashing down on Hanoi in November of 1946. So France, unlike Britain, decides to fight for their empire. France, unlike Britain, doesn't have the greatest military record. It's certainly not a lack of bravery. It's just a lot of bad luck seems to follow them around sometimes. Here's French Indochina. The French had conquered it piecemeal, a little bit here, a little bit there. Ho Chi Minh was up in the northern part of the whole thing of Vietnam. The French were strongest in the south because there's more jungle in the north. You got the highlands up there. It's very hard to work your way up. Of course, you could sail into Haiphong Harbor up there, but even that, you're starting to extend your supply lines just a bit. So the French are trying to hang on. But the French have the same problem the British do at the end of the Second World War. They're broke. Unlike the British, they're trying to fight. They don't have the money. Where are they going to find the money from? Well, this picture should tell you right there. That's a French soldier, Dien Bien Phu. It's kind of hard to tell he's a French soldier because that uniform is an American one. The United States is bankrolling 80% of France's attempt to hang on to Indochina. Even have American uniforms. It's not going to work. 8 years of fighting, they get trapped at Dien Bien Phu, they get smashed into the ground, and they lose their attempt to hang on to Vietnam. Vietnam becomes an independent country, but the story we know doesn't end there. But for France, it's basically over. So you think that maybe the French would learn their lesson, but they don't. They kept pushing it in Vietnam, and they try to pull somebody in to save them. We're already paying 80%. There was a plan called Operation Vulture when the French were trapped at Dien Bien Phu for the United States to get involved. Yeah, they wanted a bunch of B-59s, the ones that basically destroyed Japan, to come in and bomb the living daylights out of the Vietnamese around them. We decided to pass on that. And then somebody in the Pentagon had another idea. Let's drop tactical nukes on the Vietnamese at Dien Bien Phu. No, we're not going to do that. All right, that's just not a good idea. The French have lost. It's time to leave. Have a nice day, France. Let Vietnam go. So they let Vietnam go. And there we have it, divided into North and South Vietnam. They were supposed to have an election in 1956. And this would have been the one time a communist party would have won a legitimate election, I think. Yeah, it's something that usually doesn't happen. Well, it didn't happen in 1956. They tried to keep communism contained. As you know, in North Vietnam, South Vietnam becomes U.S. backed, and we know the whole Vietnam War story after that. Well, the French leave Vietnam after trying to fight for the empire. You think they would have learned something? No, let's start another fight, this time in Algeria. The first Indochina War, 1946-1954. Algerian War, 1954-1962. They dropped one and picked up the other one. Now, why is Algeria different from Vietnam? Well, look where it's located. Vietnam's the other side of the world. Algeria, right across the way over there. In France, Algeria, they've always had a relationship with each other. The French first took over Algeria in 1830 to put an end to the Barbary pirates for once and for all. And another big difference is Algeria is just not a colony, even if it's somewhat close by. Algeria has a lot of French people living along the coast. It was considered basically to be part of France. So when the war began in Algeria, it wasn't just fighting in some faraway colony, even a nearby colony. It's a place so close they considered it part of France. It's like, say the Vietnam War takes some weird turn. Instead of us fighting way over in Vietnam, it comes to Hawaii. You know, that kind of thing. It's close enough to be considered home. Well, the French, history always repeats itself. The French want help there again. They were broke when Vietnam started. They're broke when it's over. Do you think they made any money between then and now? Hey, this picture tells you what they need to know. There we are, French soldiers in Vietnam, in Algeria, wearing American uniforms again. They wanted NATO to get mixed up in it, but NATO is, focused on the Soviet invasion of Western Europe. We don't do Algeria. But the United States kind of met them halfway and funded most of that war. Not 80%, but a really good chunk. Close to 40. But nonetheless, the same result. U.S.-backed France, they lose there too. They lose in Algeria because it's just, colonial empires don't work in the 20th century. Hey, this is a M1 Abrams tank. Look at that thing. It's the best tank in the world right now, but they need to get working on this thing. It's getting kind of old. I just saw the rust there in the glaciers, man. They need to work on this thing. Why is it desert camouflage in the middle of what looks like, I don't know, Europe someplace? Yeah, I'm very critical about this picture the more I look at it. But hey, why do I have this picture? Did you know they had tanks in the Cretaceous period? Yes, they did. We called it Ankylosaurus. It looks like a tank, doesn't it? Look at the armor up top, got that club on the tail. Ankylosaurus is an interesting little guy because, well, he likes to just kind of keep to himself, but it's the Cretaceous period, so nobody keeps to themselves. That's why he's got the spikes in the club. Another unique thing about Ankylosaurus is we actually know what this thing looked like. Yeah, there's not a lot of speculation. We know about 85-90% of what it looked like. No, it didn't look like that from what was the name of that movie? The Land Before Time or whatever? I don't remember. I was busy working at the time. No, we know what it looked like because of this. A Nodosaurus, which is related to Ankylosaurus without the club, found that in the tar sands in Alberta in Canada. So we have a really good idea what it looked like, so there's not a lot of speculation. Funny how you don't see the thing about the feathers on this. It's a plant eater. It's not going to have feathers. Now, Ankylosaurus, for some reason, has a reputation for being a boring dinosaur. I don't know where it comes from, man, 'cause I see it all over the place. The most boring dinosaur, Ankylosaurus. People really seem to like Ankylosaurus. I've seen this in the store. My favorite dinosaur, Ankylosaurus. I've seen it on people's phones. I've seen t-shirts. I even saw a bumper sticker with this out on the PA Turnpike one time. And that was in Amish country. Ankylosaurus, as you can tell, its main defense is that club on its tail. Oh yeah, you get hit by that thing, it's gonna hurt. Even T-Rex thinks twice about this. And we know T-Rex tried to eat Ankylosaurus a few times because we can tell from the bones where it has fractures where it got hit by this thing. And it tells you how tough Tyrannosaurus Rex is, because if it's a fracture and it healed, it means it got hit and it just kept going afterwards. Yeah, so a lot of people think if it breaks its leg, T-Rex is going to die. Apparently, it heals and goes on after something else. But I got a feeling Ankylosaurus was going to live to fight another day after that thing. You don't get hit in the leg by this thing and just keep coming after it, you know? Ankylosaurus' main problem, just like a turtle, if it gets turned upside down, he's going to stay that way, very vulnerable. Now, turtles, when one gets flipped over and there's another turtle, they usually go to help the other turtle. Did you know that? Yeah, very social behavior. So I'm wondering if Ankylosaurus ever did the same thing, but oh, it's got to be heavy. I mean, all that armor and everything. You got to get your nose under the armor and push straight up. It's hard to say. It just seems to weigh a lot. You got those spikes on the side. Must not be easy. That's probably what's going to happen when he gets flipped over, right? T-Rex going to enjoy a meal right there. It's probably the most likely outcome of a T-Rex Ankylosaurus battle, but I don't know. Ankylosaurus might actually come out ahead of a few of these things. Look at this picture. You see how agile a Tyrannosaurus Rex is. He could probably dodge that thing and wait for Ankylosaurus to overextend itself while it's swinging. I don't know. A couple times with that club swinging at me, it might be time to move on to something else, you know? It's not fear. It's not giving up. It's just common sense. I don't want to get hit by a 25-pound club of solid bone. It looks like it is really going to hurt. So, like I said, Ankylosaurus, very interesting. Not a lot that does. It kind of eats and stays around, but I really don't think it's the most boring dinosaur. I just thought of something else, another defense mechanism it might have. Have you ever thought maybe it curls its legs underneath itself and digs its head sort of into the dirt so nobody can really scrape at it? That might be interesting. On the other hand, T-Rex might grab the side and try and flip him over too. So, hey, let me know what you think about that one down in the comments. But Ankylosaurus, yeah, I don't think you're boring. I like you, Ankylosaurus. Welcome to drop by anytime. Don't think I have a lot of food here for you, but we'll figure something out. Alrighty. In the 60s, it was the Green Bay Packers. In the 70s, the greatest team of all time, the Pittsburgh Steelers, had their dynasty. Well, in the 80s, we've got a new power rising up. Ask the British and French. They have the moment they decline. Then we have the Cold War between the U.S. and Soviet Union. The Steelers are dominating everything. And, they get old, they start to retire. And we got a new team rising up, the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers storm onto the scene during the 1981 season with a 45-14 demolition of the Dallas Cowboys, a team a lot of people thought could dominate the early part of the decade. If you don't believe the Cowboys, just ask them. They'll be happy to tell you how great they are. The Niners used to have problems with the Cowboys. They came out of the way and completely destroyed them in this game. They've emerged out onto the national scene. They go crazy. They win the championships. They're going all the way. They meet in the conference championship. Who's waiting for them? Dallas. They meet in San Francisco. Dallas just dismisses the 49ers, saying that game back in the fourth week of the season was just an off day. They're going to win it and set everything straight. They come close, not quite. The 49ers win 28-27 on a pass from quarterback Joe Montana, tight end Dwight Clark there, with 58 seconds to win the game, and they called it the catch. See that Cowboy cornerback there is getting burned, number 24? Yeah, he actually had a great game. He had 2 interceptions in that game. Yeah, nobody remembers that because, hey, they lost the game at the end, right? That's how it works. With this game, though, they've got the Dallas Cowboy curse shaken off, and they go on to dominate the 1980s. After this game, Super Bowl 16. Right there, San Francisco defeats Cincinnati in the comfortable dome of Detroit, the Silver Dome at the time. Here's a bit of trivia. The first game of the 1981 season, the 49ers lost in Detroit? Yeah, they lost in Detroit. In the last game of the Super Bowl, they win in Detroit. See, it's not how you start, it's how it ends. The 49ers are going to pretty much dominate the 80s. This was a team that was pretty much unstoppable in that era. Remember how the Steelers used to fight with the Raiders and later on the Houston Oilers? Well, the team that the 49ers were fighting with, Dallas faded away, became the Chicago Bears, and for some strange reason, the Minnesota Vikings. We'll talk why that's so strange. They had pretty good seasons there, 82, 83. 1984, they're back at it again. 15 victories, 1 loss, 15 and 1. The one loss to the Steelers, 1984. You're welcome, world. 1984, they played the Chicago Bears in the conference championship. Not even close. 49ers shut them out 23 to nothing. They move on to their second Super Bowl right down the road in Stanford, California. They defeat Miami for their second Super Bowl. Last time you've seen the Dolphins in a Super Bowl. Another interesting thing about this game is they played in Stanford, which is fairly close to San Francisco. It's the closest anyone's had to a home Super Bowl until the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did it in 2020 and the Rams in 2021. That's Super Bowl number 2 for the 49ers. They spent the next 3 years, kind of like the Packers. Remember, had that little drought in the middle? They were really good. They kept getting close, but couldn't quite get over the hump. Just sort of bad luck. In 1987, they had a really good team, 13 and 2. They play against the Minnesota Vikings, who aren't very good on paper. This game should have been over. And for some reason, the Vikings destroyed the 49ers at home, 36-22. Nothing working out for the Niners in this game. It got so bad that Joe Montana got benched. They brought in Steve Young, famous for running 50 yards without a helmet. Didn't matter. Nothing working out that day. But hey, these guys are champions. They might get knocked down, but they're going to get back up again. And 1988, they're back at it. And who's their old foe? The Chicago Bears again. The Bears had that fantastic Super Bowl run in 1985. They dominate one part of the conference. The Niners are dominating the other. They met head-to-head for 1988 conference championship. You can tell they don't like each other, right? They're talking smack already. And it's in Chicago. The conference championship was really cold. I still remember some of these advertisements. It's bear weather. Yeah, well, you know, it's cold. Yeah, expect that in January in Chicago. San Francisco, you're never going to confuse that with Pittsburgh, but it does get pretty nasty. So they went toe-to-toe. The Bears are talking smack about going to the Super Bowl again. Final score, San Francisco 28, Chicago 3. For all the bluster, couldn't even score a touchdown. 49ers, guess who's waiting for them in Miami? Super Bowl 23 at Cincinnati again. Came in the same old way, win the same old way. San Francisco wins this one again. 20-16, 2-minute drive at the end. I've always liked this picture because see number 98 there with the visor, can't even see his eyes. And look, he's stepping on that 49er over there. He's not doing it on purpose, but I always thought it was kind of funny. San Francisco gets their third one. 1989, not even a contest. San Francisco just explodes through the league. They destroyed Denver in the Super Bowl, their fourth victory there. 55-10, man, not even close. Ironically, the Niners lost 2 home games that year. Yeah, but they won every one on the road. Very strange. So they've won 2 in a row. Here we go. Do you think maybe they can go for 3? 1990, the Niners are doing fantastic. Joe Montana's having his best year. They get to the playoffs. They're marching into the conference championships. And boom, in 30 seconds, their entire dynasty ends up getting derailed. It's a clean hit. It was a good hit, and somehow we see Joe Montana's hand and elbow get absolutely destroyed. It changes career. He's going to sit out the 91 season, back up in 92, eventually go to Kansas City. But that just completely wrecked the dynasty. Here come the New York Giants, who are pretty good, but they're probably not going to beat the Niners. That's why we played a game, find out. Montana goes down. The Giants' defense really tough. It comes down to a last-second field goal, and guess what? Boom. The Giants hit the field goal. They win 15-13. They're going to Super Bowl 25. There's a Giants quarterback, Jeff Hostetler, there doing the old cartwheel. I always thought this was funny. If I were the coach, Bill Parcells at that time, I would have gone out and yelled at him, "Hey, moron, didn't you see one quarterback get hurt? I don't need you doing something to your spinal cord here." The Giants win. This is the closest anyone's come to 3 straight Super Bowls. Came down to a missed field goal. Had they gone to that Super Bowl against Buffalo, if the Giants win, I'm pretty sure the 49ers would have won. So the 49ers dominated the 80s. They were a really good team. And I know what you're thinking. How would the Niners in the 1980s done against my Steelers from the 1970s? Guess we'll never know, but we do have a little bit of insight here. In 1981, the 49ers came to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers. The Steelers still had some of the guys from the dynasty there, and the 49ers would win 17-14. But before you say, aha, there's your answer, let me remind you, gentle listener, that the Steelers in 1981 are already kind of on the downside, and some of the guys who built the dynasty in the 70s had retired already, whereas the 49ers are finally starting their rise over here, and they don't have all the pieces yet. So, we're not really sure if this is indicative of how the game would have turned out. Of course, you would expect me to say that, right? But if you want to argue about the 70s Steelers, the 80s 49ers, hey, man, just mention something down there in the comments. Well, time for me to run off right now. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Have yourself a great day, and I will see you next week. Das vidanya.